In this video, we're going to talk about using external code files. So what are external code files? Well, those are just standalone files that can be linked to HTML pages. This is exactly like what we did with our CSS, where we would put that into a .css file and then link it to our HTML. And in the case of JavaScript, the external file, instead of using .css, it uses the extension .js. Those files are added to HTML, not using the link in the href like you do with CSS, but using the script tag and then the source property within the script tag. So we've been using the script tag down at the bottom of our pages and then actually explicitly putting our code in there. You can also use that script tag with the source property, which we haven't done yet, and we'll see that in a second. You can use that source property to just point to an external file rather than putting all of your script in between the two, the open and close script tags. Now, why do we want to do this? Why use external code files? Well, these are easily applied to multiple pages, just like we've done with our CSS. Remember when you made your website and it was super easy to just stick that one line of code into each HTML page to access all of that CSS. Same thing you can do with your JavaScript. You can then, especially it's great for larger projects, just have one line of code, and then that allows you to include all the functionality of whatever code you've written into each of your HTML files. You can also, with particularly large projects, use this to organize your code. So you might have a set of utility functions that live in one JS file. You might have specific functions for a certain page that are in another JS file. And it's very easy to just add whichever ones you need at the top of your HTML page. This also, just pragmatically speaking, from the code standpoint, it allows you to view your code and your HTML side by side. So instead of scrolling down to the bottom and scrolling back up and scrolling, you can put those two pages side by side, and then it's real easy to make your edits, and it makes it a lot more straightforward to do your programming and refer to anything that you need on the HTML side. And then finally, it's going to clean up your HTML file. So instead of having all that code at the bottom of the page, you'll just have the HTML in the HTML, a couple lines in the header. The HTML files will be smaller, and as we've talked about before in terms of universal design, they'll be more accessible and easier for people to use and access. So that gives us a few reasons why we would want to do this. It gives us a sense of what it is. Let's go ahead and take a look at some examples and turn a single page HTML file into a file that references some external code pages. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and continue using the coin flip experiment page that we started with in this module. And as you recall, we've got our CSS here, and then we've got our code, our JavaScript code at the bottom. So just by way of a refresher and a reminder of how this works, I'm going to go ahead and create an external CSS file as well as an external JavaScript file for this page, and just completely clean up the HTML and make it just HTML in this file. So first thing I did was just to cut the CSS. Now I didn't delete it, I cut it so it's sitting on the clipboard right now. And now I've just opened a new notepad page over here, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste that. And again, remember, when you're using the external CSS file, you do not need the style tags because it's not an HTML file, it is a CSS file. So you can just directly start writing CSS. And I went ahead and kept our little comments that we created in the last lesson. Now, all I need to do is go ahead and save as, and now notice, in my folder structure here, I have created a CSS and a JS folder. And again, this is best practice in terms of organizing your files. For these kinds of utility files that we're adding in, we do organize those by type. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the CSS folder and remember the trick. So give it whatever name you want. But the important thing is that you give it that .css extension. Okay, now the only other thing that we need to do, so right now, if we were to take a look at our page in the browser, it would look like nothing because we've removed all of the CSS. So the last thing we need to do is to reestablish the link between the CSS and the new file that we've created. So remember, we want to use the rel for relationship property in our link tag. And then again, remember how to calculate a referential link. It's all in the same main folder, but then there's a subfolder called CSS. So we need to go from our file into the subfolder. So we just need to use the name, so we don't need to go up a level. It's just directly in the same folder with us. So go ahead and use the name. And then we called it coin flip style. And the link tag is just a single tag, HTML tag. It doesn't have an end tag, but we can show that with this. You don't have to, but you can. And we know that we've done it right when we reload and we get all of our CSS back. So all set, that one's great. So that's just a refresher reminder. Now, the new thing that we want to do is to create a new file for our code. So we're going to follow the same process. And again, we do not need the script tags here. We can ignore that. Just take the stuff that's in between the two script tags. Okay, and then I've opened another notepad file. I'm just pasting in all of my code here. And then same thing, I'm just going to save as. And this time I'm going to go into the JS file. And again, call it whatever you want, but the key thing is to use that .js extension. We also can get rid of these two script tags down here. We don't need those, but we are going to add one up here in the header to reestablish that link, just like we did with our CSS. In this case, though, we're going to use the source property. That's the one that goes along with script. Same thing, we want our JS calculating that. And in this case, the script tag does in fact have an end tag, so we need to include that entire start and end. Okay, and how do we know we're successful? Well, this is going to be the big test. I'm going to go ahead and reload this. And there we go. It is functioning just fine. So, and as you can see, the script is no longer down here. It is functioning just completely from this link to our external file. And now just take a look at how clean and nice our HTML file is. It's got nothing but the HTML in it. And then we have our code in an easy to locate place that we can view at the same time we're doing our coding. In a lot of ways, using external files can make our job a lot easier. It also makes the experience better for our users in terms of that universal design. So this really is the best practice. So that's what we're going to be doing as we continue on in this class.